What is going on, guys? We are back for another episode of Pokemon Top 5s. This week we'll be covering the top 5 Pokemon villains. Now, this is kind of a combination of the top Pokemon teams, or villain teams, and the leaders. So it's kind of a combination of the two. So if the list seems a little bit weird, you know, just know that it's because it's a combination. And of course, as always, guys, it's 100% opinionated, meaning that, you know, my list could change, you know, it might not be considered fully accurate, but for me, this is what the list is. So of course, make sure you like, subscribe if you haven't, and leave in the comment section down below your top 5 villains or your top 5 villainous teams. But without further ado, let us hop in to number 5. Alright, so at number 5, we have Archie and Maxie. Now, these guys are very memorable antagonists, but they lack the planning or the destructive nature to really make them a top-tier threat in terms of evil villain teams. Basically, the gist of their stories is that Team Magma's primary goal is to increase the world's landmass, to provide the world with more room to develop, and Archie is kind of the opposite, right? He's a pirate, he's lived on the water his whole life. His goal is really just to expand the sea, give him and his fellow pirates more kind of room to do their thing. And so they really just don't have a good long-term foresight. You know, both their plans would pretty much destroy the Earth, and in terms of planning, you know, you see from both games, they pick up the wrong orbs. So they literally don't know what they're doing. They pick up the wrong orbs, and then they have to deal with the fact that they just, like, don't know what they're doing afterwards. They end up being super supportive and helpful to the character, stop what they've started. But yeah, I mean, in terms of their plan, you know, Maxie, you know, you can see where Maxie comes from, or you can see where Archie comes from more than you can see where Maxie comes from. And the reason that I say this is that, you know, Archie's probably some uneducated pirate. Lived his whole life in the water. You know, they hear the stories of Kyogre and able to bring torrential rain and then, like, expand the ocean. And, you know, it's kind of the god of the sea, and so you'd want to capture Kyogre anyways. There's a story of, like, an orb, and so that's kind of your treasure that you're looking for. And so for me, you can absolutely see where Archie comes from. Archie's actually probably the more evil of the two, but and then when you look at Maxie, you look at this scientist that just had no regard for the environment when thinking about the long-term effects of what his plans were. And so, for me, anyways, if you're gonna rank them 1-2, it's obviously Team Magma at 6, and then kind of Team Aqua at 5. But for me, they both kind of shared the same spot. You know, they both aren't really inherently evil. They just didn't see the long-term ramifications of what they were trying to accomplish. And so for me, that is why they're number 5, but let us move on to number 4. Okay, so at number 4, we have Team Rocket and inherently Giovanni. So Team Rocket is the first evil organization that Pokemon has really seen. They're kind of the equivalent to the Mafia, and they kind of have the widest reach of any of the villainous teams, as they are actually in Kanto, Johto, and Alola. And, you know, by comparison standpoint, you know, the Mafia isn't as bad as destroying the planet, you know what I mean? But the fact that they're involved in 3 regions, and the fact that they even actually go a little bit further and have gotten into Pokemon experimentations has kind of made them a little bit more of a threat overall in my mind. You know, their main goal is to steal and obtain rare Pokemon in order to one day take over the world. You know, any kind of Mafia boss You know, that's what they're gonna do. And you know, but Team Rocket, you know, their more evil things have come from the scientists that they've employed, the creation of Mewtwo, and the fact that they've done a ton of physical and psychological damage to an unthinkable amount of Pokemon, you know? And so for me, they kind of have just this extra level, right? And Giovanni himself, I mean, he literally is the poster child of, like, this is the gold standard of what we want a villain to kind of act and look like, you know what I mean? He gives off that aura that he actually is super evil, but when you think about it, stealing Pokemon is kind of basic in compared to everything else on this list, but you know, that's kind of that, but that is really number 4. So let us move on to number 3. Alright, so at number 3, we actually have more of an individual than an actual evil team. COLRESS is here because of a couple different reasons. So one, he is a Team Plasma boss that was appointed by Ghetsis himself, and his thing is that he's a Pokemon researcher. Now the thing about him is that he's really only interested in drawing out the anger and true power of what Pokemon are capable of, and he doesn't really care about being cruel or anything like that. Now the other thing that makes him individually kind of crazy is he actually doesn't really agree with Team Plasma's goals, and Team Plasma is doing some pretty wild, crazy shit, and he's totally cool being with them, not because he agrees with what they're doing, but just because they fund his experiments. And so it's actually kind of crazy. He genuinely just, he's there because they fund his stuff, and he doesn't really care what they're doing around him. Even though he's kind of helping them out and everything, that isn't really his goal. He's just in it for science and doesn't really care. He's like, do your thing. But like, to me, that just mindset shows how actually evil COLRESS can be, you know? The fact that you have no moral compass, the fact that you have, you know, you see all these Pokemon that are being tortured, and, you know, your boss is literally sitting there trying to take over the world, and you're just like, I'm just here for the science. Like, you know, it's a pretty, what's the word? Oh my goodness. What is the word? Like, self-indulgent reasons, right? And so for me, individually, because he has the ability to do it all on his own and do the science part all on his own, he actually put me in another level over Giovanni, right? Like, because Giovanni, you know, he's a mafia boss, he's gonna bust your kneecaps, you know, he's gonna steal your lunch money, but I mean, like, he really isn't sitting there trying to help some dude take over well, I mean, he is trying to take over the world, but he's doing it with a bunch of teenagers, where you can see that Team Plasma is like military trained people, you know what I mean? Like, so it's like in a huge army. So I mean, there's just a different level to it, right? And so for me, that's why COLRESS ended up at number 3. But let us move on to number 2. Alright, so at number 2, we have Team Plasma. Now, Team Plasma, you know, they are on this list, and I actually almost put them number 1. I was very, very close to putting them number 1. The biggest reason that they didn't become number 1 is because their goal as a whole is not as evil as the next one you're gonna see. Team Plasma is really just trying, and Ghetsis in particular, he's really just trying to be the only person in the world with Pokemon, so that he can kind of go in, control the world, and be the only, and be completely unopposed. And that's really kind of his thing. Now, the thing with Ghetsis in particular is that Ghetsis is probably the most individually evil person of all of these teams. He's to this day, he's the only evil team member that's actively tried to kill the player in Black and White 2. You know, he actually really shows like a tyrant elements. You know, he has a massive following, and really his whole thing is hypocrisy, right? Nobody can have Pokemon. I'm gonna stop. Everyone should be releasing their Pokemon. You know, and then so that he can be the only person with Pokemon, right? So you kind of see this as you go, but and the further to that, I mean, the way that he manipulates N, right? Promising him all this stuff just to kind of get him further where he needs to go, and then he kind of just does his own thing, and he's absolutely super evil. But yeah, so that's why he is number 2. But you're gonna see why number 1 is where it is. So let us move on to number 1. Alright, so at number 1 we have Team Galactic and Cyrus. Now, Cyrus individually, you know, his whole thing is that he wants to start the world from scratch, reimagine the world in his own image, and kind of become a god. And his plan is to take Dialga and Palkia and change the space-time continuum and, you know, create his own world. And the thing with Team Galactic is that they end up kind of becoming the most threatening to everybody. I mean, their team is super evil. They're torturing legendary Pokemon. They're literally setting off bombs throughout the region, like killing Pokemon and all this stuff. And what's crazy about it is that Team Galactic, unlike Team Plasma, Ghetsis kind of lets most of his people know what his plan is. Cyrus just kind of has this front, and then he has this side goal that's kind of his own. And so none of his team really actually knows what he's really doing. And what's even crazier about it is that Ghetsis kind of gets his way. So in the Pokemon Platinum game, he actually elects to go to the Distortion World when Giratina comes to stop Dialga and Palkia. So he actually gets to go to his other world that kind of sounds like what he was looking for this world to be like. And he kind of gets just to live his Thanos life, chilling in another world, doing his own thing. And so for me, it's actually kind of crazy that they kind of let the evil guy kind of get what he wanted, and that is the wrong layout. Oh my goodness, my bad. Ooh, I'm not editing that out. But yeah, so that is my top 5 villains for this week. If you guys have a different list, let me know in the comment section down below. You know, can't believe I did that. Oh my god, we're leaving it in. But yeah, so make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't. If you have a different list, let me know in the comment section down below. And I will see you guys in the next one.